and welcome to our Fireside chat. I want to introduce Dr. Frank Konieczni, who I'm going to let him introduce himself. That's okay. Dr. K.
I'm Frank Konieczni. I used to be the prior CTO of the Air Force for about 11 years. I also worked at AT Government Solutions. For 10 years, I was the CTO, the CIO, and the ops director. So I have a well-versed idea of what the commercial side needs as well as what the government side needs. Right now, I'm private consulting to a large variety of customers across the board, small and large.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. My name is Colin Mc Hugo. I am a former law enforcement officer with a detective background, with 30 years in the information technology space and about 15 plus years in the cybersecurity space, both in private sector and government agencies. My experience is mainly been around cybersecurity incident response, leads and management and SOC teams, as well as threat vulnerability management. I've also lectured in Ireland in penetration testing and lectured in the Middle East, and now currently a Principal Chief Information Security Officer Advisor for Avocado. So with all that formality over with, Dr. K has agreed that we will call him Frank from now on to keep this nice and lighthearted. So thank you, sir. And yeah, let's dive in. So Frank, can you discuss the overall cybersecurity environment that security professionals face in maintaining business operations in your view?
Okay, well, first of all, let's discuss how hackers get into your operations. The biggest one is social engineering. You probably realize this already. There's a lot of phishing attacks going on. There's some spoofing attacks that are going on as well. And when you fish for a top executive, it's called whaling. But one of the most insidious one is baiting. This is kind of interesting because it faces false advertisements. What happens is, you get something on your screen that says, hey, this is a good idea, and you actually click on it. That's a problem. And in fact, I'll give you a good example. We had a particular baiting attempt during Thanksgiving where they were giving away turkeys. And guess what? Every one of them clicked on that to get a free turkey. And they were terribly messed up after that because of the way that the hackers came in on top of them. Okay, so and on top of that also, what you can do is you can have third-party exposure. This is very insidious because some of your suppliers, you can get suppliers access your systems. The hackers can come through your suppliers without you knowing about it until later on. And the last one, which is always the big one, is cyber hygiene. People like to delay updates because it's easier to delay them to actually do them. And I understand that because sometimes they take down systems. And therefore, you don't want to take down your system. But at the same time, you are now vulnerable to attacks. And so you have to always keep your cyber hygiene up and going all the time. Okay, let's talk about what happens when your hacker gets in.
Yeah.
About 22% now is ransomware. You've heard about ransomware attacks all over the place. And they are insidious because they do that. And they want the money, usually, or they want to expose the data, which is the other issue that you always have. That's the data exfiltration issue. Sometimes it's obvious. They say, I have the money, I have the data, and I want to do something with it. Sometimes it's clandestine. They sell it on the black market. It's something that you have to watch out for. The other one that's a little more insidious is data modification. This is where the hacker comes in and modifies your data without you knowing it. And therefore, it confuses your business systems as well as your mission as to what you want to achieve. This is the insidious one that, they're doing it for a particular purpose, but a lot of it's because they want to stop your business in some way. The other one is also DDoS, denial of service attacks. This is not probably the biggest one because there's lots of ways of getting around DDoS attacks right now. But it's a question of how you actually can maintain your continuity in your websites and everything else. Because if somebody DDoSes you for a day, you will have no activity during that day unless you move the DDoS off. And the last one, of course, is what they always want to do is want to disrupt all your key systems, which is your crown jewels of how you actually maintain your business. For instance, the financial system. If they can disrupt your financial systems, you may not be able to make payroll, nor pay your bills, nor collect money. That is a big deal for businesses and for the government all the time. So it's always a target for, the hackers coming in. And I think that's pretty much the environment, what's out there right now.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really well summarized. And I have to agree with you that they are the big pillars that management has to watch out for sure. And human error is probably the biggest one of all of that. But also, it is really incumbent on management to give those people in management, middle management, the ability and the tools to be able to see these faults and see these issues arise as they come up. And I totally agree with everything you've said there, and linking in with your logs into your SIM and making sure that your monitoring is up to speed, as well as your security awareness, as well as your hygiene, as you said, and don't click on things for free turkeys is what I'm hearing here. So yeah.
At least free turkeys.
Thank you. Okay, so let me see. Zero trust is something that's very popular. So I'm just thinking, zero trust has been highlighted in the industry, and government, as what needs to be done to be ward off these cybersecurity attacks, in your opinion. And what do you think is the primary zero trust principles?
Okay, there's several of them. The first one is the obvious one: never trust, always verify.
Sure.
This is the hardest one, but that's what you have to do. And then how do you do it? You do authentication, it means who you are, and you do authorization is what you can do. This is very important because sometimes you can authenticate a person that comes into the system, but they can do anything they want to do. And that's a dangerous entity. Now, it's also for non-person entities. You're going to hear MPE is an abbreviation for non-person entities. That's the other systems that are attacking your system or getting into your system, such as your backup systems, such as your IoT systems, such as your OT systems. Also, your HVAC thermometer and thermostat is a big vulnerability issue that people don't realize, that when they do an update for your thermostat, guess what? If you're on the primary network, they can come in that way. So you got to be very careful. Again, they're not authorized to do anything. They're just there. Okay, the next piece is devices. You should be able to have some security as to know the devices that are being connected into your system. Sometimes you don't, but you should know it all the time, because some devices come in dynamically. And so you have to be careful of those devices.
Yeah.
Third is the network environment. What we've gone down to is everything is being encrypted in transmission. But everybody's going down to a point now where they want to do segmentation of the network. That means that instead of having everybody go through the same network pieces and get to the same applications, all the applications, you want to narrow this focus down so that you will generate a person going to a particular application based on their authentication and their authorization capabilities. That's a total segmentation down to that level. Now, some people don't like to do that because that's a lot of work. It's one of those things, but it's necessary at times to actually do that.
Yeah.
Another tenet is basically automation. You want to be able to automate as much as possible. A lot of this is the vulnerability patch management capabilities that you want to have. So when you get a patch in, you want to automatically do it. That leads to the problem of maintaining your cyber hygiene all the time, which is a problem. Yeah. The other piece is you want to be able to have adaptive access controls. That means if something is happening that you don't know about and you haven't seen it before, you probably should stop it. At least slow it down.
Yeah.
And that's part of the automation capabilities you want to have. Of course, you want to have visibility analytics. This is part of continuous monitoring. Everybody wants to have this as part of your SIM. And the question is, you have to be able to actually manage it in such a way that it's not overwhelming to you. So this is where we go back to the automation piece again. How can you automate the occurrence of events, or the relevance of events that are going on all the time in your SIM? Lastly, data. Data should always be encrypted. It should be encrypted in motion. It should be encrypted at rest. It should be encrypted all the time. And this has been a big deal because sometimes your data is encrypted when sitting in the database, or maybe sometimes it's encrypted when it's in transit, but usually it's not both of those places. They have to be both. And I think that's probably the best tendency you actually have for getting to a zero trust environment.
Yeah, 100% agree with you as well on this one. The big pink elephant in the room in most IT spaces is your CMDB and your assets. What do we own? And your database team tell you one thing, and your infrastructure team will tell you another team, and your security team will tell you another team. And most people don't talk about it. And until you get that fixed and get that sorted, you can't secure what you don't know you have. And I think, you encompass that,
and that's why you need to know the devices that are connecting.
100%.
Otherwise, you will not know any. I mean, a lot of times laptops connect and you're like, who's that laptop?
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't know who it is, it may be a problem.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, in a real world scenario, what can happen is the cybersecurity team, if they're proactive, they'll shut down anything that's strange coming in, which is a good thing. But then for business, they get very agitated, like, oh, hold on, I'm just me. But like, yeah, but we didn't know you were you until now.
Yes.
So
this is in the government side, it's called comply to connect, which means you have to validate your document, validate your laptop before you actually will connect, and it has to be updated with security parameters associated with it. And then we always have that discussion. You know, if somebody comes in and they are a high-ranking official, and the comply to connect shuts them off, you know, we get into a particular problem of culture is, you know, I'm high-ranking, I should be able to get it, but you know, you don't have the right equipment, sir. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Try again.
Yeah. And I've seen that over the years where, you know, people at the very top can sometimes have the least, because, you know, they're the ones with the tablets and the things that aren't secure, and you're like, oh, what, you know, and obviously that's the very, very dangerous, you know. And you talked about network segmentation as well, and all this, you know, IoT devices, and if it's a flat network, you're in trouble. You have to have segmentation. So brilliant. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Okay, so I'll throw another one at you. What do you think, Frank, are the common challenges faced by chief information security officers when devising their cybersecurity roadmap? Well,
I think all the CISOs basically want to have an enterprise view. That's a problem. I mean, they want to be able to cover everything all the time. And when you have 200-300 applications, it's very difficult across the board. And if you're disparate places across the United States or Europe or both, you know, you have this issue of how can you maintain all this? But the CISOs always want an enterprise view. The problem with an enterprise view is that they're not focusing, therefore, on the crown jewels of your systems, your crown jewel applications, that which you depend upon every day to get your job done. And I think that is one of the problem spaces right now, that somebody should focus on, you know, these are systems that are most important to getting my job done, and everything else is okay. But, you know, the scheduling for choir practice or the cafeteria menu is not that great a big deal. You know, you can do whatever you want to do with those. The other problem is also that you have to realize that there are IoT devices sitting in your systems all the time. And I said, basically, HVAC systems are, you know, everything else is dependent upon a lot of these: electricity, HVAC, water. If those fail or if they go down, you have to think about it from the CISO viewpoint. What else is going to go down? If electricity goes down, a lot of times everything will go down. Depends if you have a motor generator established or whatever, another supply. But it's very difficult at times, so you got to be careful of that. And there's also things like, you know, card readers. Okay, I've been in a place where the card reader goes down and nobody gets work done because nothing's going on. They can't get in. They can't get anything through it. So it's really a problem space at that point in time. So you know, something has to be taken care of that. And I think, you know, that's basically the focus of the CISO. The CISO has a big problem all the time. They want to go big, cover it all, but they have these individual issues that they have to direct themselves to, and that takes time away from them. No, I agree. It has to be a risk-based approach, but in order for them to do that, going back to my original point, having a CMDB, knowing what you have, what your assets are, but then you need to actually go and layer them. What tier are they in? Are they in tier 0? Are they tier 1? Are they behind 4 firewalls? Where are they in the network? And that's a lot of work. But if you do it properly, and if CISOs, if you're checking and scratching your head right now, I'll tell you how you'll know if you're doing the job. Have you got a dedicated person that's doing this? And if you don't, you're not doing the job, because it won't work on its own. There's no automated tool that will do this correctly or perfectly. It needs human intervention. You have to get into the weeds. Who owns what? Where is this? And have a life cycle. You know, whether, you know, who's doing the decommissioning, who's commissioning, where are your images, who's, you know, what's on, where are your virtual machines, what's spinned up, what's spun down, and what's, you know, your process there. And if you don't know what your crown jewels are, then you're in trouble, because how can you protect them? So 100% agree, and all your other points. Brilliant. Thank you, Frank. Amazing. And I'll tell you something about the CMDB. The CMDB problem is a big one, because people don't realize that part of the CMDB is also to determine if there's IVA or hacker notations against them already that's sitting out there, because they have to replace those things. And also, let's not forget about end-of-life equipment.
Yes, 100%.
Software, which is a big problem because people like to avoid that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. And, it scares the life when you go into organizations and you do TVM, your threat vulnerability management, and then you see all of these systems, and it can be in tens of thousands that have vulnerabilities, and they don't know what to do. But if you rank them then by threat level, so you kind of go, well, that's internal. They'd have to go through 2 firewalls to get to there. So let's concentrate on the, tier 0, tier 1, and then over the next 3 years or 2 years, we'll get to the internals or whatever so. To be done. Yeah, I know that's not the optimum, but unless you bring in 10 people. But yeah, it's a concern. I don't think most people are talking about a CMDB issue, and companies and enterprises and government organizations who are serious take this seriously, and it leads to everything better. It leads to TVM problem better. It leads to security monitoring better, management understanding, statistics, everything is better, I think, when you get the CMDB.
The problem is getting your organization to go along with that.
Yes, it can be expensive. Like it can be expensive to do that, but it changes the game, in my opinion, because again, how can you protect? What I actually love to do, Frank, is if I'm doing a tabletop or I'm doing war games, I'll find something that is totally end of life, and then I'll use that in the tabletop, and then you'll see managers sweating. They're kind of go, that doesn't exist. And I'm like, it does exist.
Yeah, it does exist.
Yeah,
and then, they don't realize that at all. And then the other comment is, if the systems are spread across, Europe and the United States, and they're not all co-located in this one cloud or someplace else, and multiple clouds and everything else, or even local hardware, it's really a very problem game to actually find everything and make sure it runs and keep it together.
Yeah, because most people don't know what they have, because the organization builds up around them. So, and that's understandable, but it's incumbent and it's responsibility of management to give the tools to the security team and the IT team, and it makes things a lot easier, especially at the application level. Then go down to the application level. What applications do you have? Are they end of life? Where are we with that? Where's the patching with that? And all that good stuff. So thank you so much, Frank. That's brilliant. I'll throw another one at you. What do you think is the best cybersecurity strategy for zero trust requirements for government and industry?
I think we go back to the key point. You got to know what your key applications, data, and hardware is, no matter what you do. I mean, you have to identify them. The crown jewels are very important, and then you have to identify what the vulnerable attack surface is for each of these. Yeah. People don't like to do that because that's work. I mean, they say, I got my 3 firewalls sitting out there. It should be fine. I don't have to worry about them anymore. However, firewalls are pretty porous nowadays. Yeah. So it's a question of what is your vulnerable attack surface for each of your applications, and it depends upon the tool sets you have in your applications. It depends upon the databases. It depends upon what you are doing, and even as what libraries have you brought in, especially open source libraries.
Yeah.
So these things have to be all put together, and then what you have to do is you should apply all the principles we talked about to these particular components, and try to increase the coverage for all those for critical systems. The usual one that everybody applies first is the identity, credential, and access management one, because that is the key a lot of times, because you have to know who is authorized in the system, and then who has capabilities to do things in that system.
Yeah.
Authorization and authentication. Authentication, who you are, authorization, what you can do. And I think that's the key for most of these. And you have to remember, again, as I said before, the non-person entities exist out there, and they have to have the same. And that's where a lot of people fall apart, because they don't like to think about a non-person entity as a person, but they are equivalent to, because they can go and steal your data just as well as everybody else can.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And there's so many angles we could talk about here with service accounts and password rotations, and my experience is that there's bad hygiene out there because it's not really emphasized. You can see service accounts that passwords have never been changed. You can see C-suite that have one password for the last 10 years and they're using that same one, and thank God for multi-factor authentication, or they would be breached a long time ago. So there's so many different things that could be spoken about there, and Yeah, a lot of organizations have to get that hygiene piece right, and that goes back to what we were just discussing about the life cycle, isn't it? Having the life cycle, even joiners, leavers. Have you got that sorted? So if somebody joining is easy, but leaving, have you checked that? And I've been involved in organizations where we're going through, and I'm repeating the same person's name over and over again, and say, but they have all these systems. Oh, they left 8 months ago. I'm like, what?
Yes, yes,
And yeah,
that's
so
pretty normal. That's one of those. Now,
yeah.
sometimes you have to have the person in the system for historical purposes, but they don't have to have access.
Yeah, exactly. And and then that could lead us into rogue employees and whatnot. But look, I think that's a topic for another time. So look, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, so a lot of security tools in the market claim they have zero trust principles. How does Avocado, in your opinion, differ from these tools?
Avocado is kind of interesting because it goes down to the socket services level of the application. This is kind of unique. I mean, when we talk about network segmentation, we're at the network level. We're not at the application level. This one, Avocado goes down to this level to actually determine the application's vulnerability attack surface. It does the analysis of what is connected to your systems in terms of components, what components are all connected. Is there, boxes out there that you should know about? It identifies those boxes, identifies, rogue databases or something that's left over from testing. It's done that several times already. And so what happens is that it can identify your attack surface. At the same time, when it can also take your attack surface and protect it through what we call zero trust rings. Basically, if you have a component that links to another component, if you have a database that links to a particular service, it can lock that linkage so that nothing else can go between the database except for that service. And that's how some of the rogues come in. They attack the connection points. This is the way you actually put zero trust within the application layer that you don't really see, because it is down to the actual data flows between the sockets and the services. So the rings come automatically most of the time. You can actually add more emphasis to a particular ring as you go, or you think you're going to have a problem space, you can enforce even more capabilities. But part of it is also the authentication piece, because you can do the authentication for people coming in, whatever, through the data flow, especially for those non-person entities, which are always out there, which you don't think about. And then this allows you to do this segmentation, if you will, across the entire application. And for automation points, what you can do is there's a unique capability within Avocado that uses some AI capabilities. The AI capability actually runs and determines what your standard flow is across those particular components. And when you break that flow or change the flow, it can actually stop things. If you think that, all of a sudden your flow is between, 20 bits a day, and all of a sudden it's 5,000, you may have a problem. It's more like 20 megabytes, terabytes nowadays, 500 terabytes, but and so what happens is it manages the flows and says, oh, this is the standard flow. I'm predicting the flow is going to be this. And it can predict within certain ranges, of course. But when you flow out more and more, obviously something is wrong. It can stop it. And therefore, you want predictive analysis for the automation as well. And of course, there's always visibility. You have to have visibility across everything. So the SIEM is a point of contact that Avocado can use and feeds information to your local SIEM. It also has the capability of doing encryption between two components within the system that you may have not encrypted normally. This is going to fall on some systems that, people for the older legacy systems, sometimes you may not encrypt the flow between your database and your applications, pieces of your application. Encrypt, particularly Avocado can actually support that. And so it's a question of them actually doing that. And you can do it within the system itself. So what it comes out to be is that what happens is an application of zero trust principles across the lowest level of the application. And the application doesn't even know what's happening, which is more interesting. You can load a update of the application on, and the application will not know that anything happened to it, but it'll still report information back in that application. So you don't have to change the application.
Yeah, brilliant. And it doesn't create extra load on that application.
Yeah, it's minuscule amount of load.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, amazing. I think this is something that is really groundbreaking and, is really revolutionary to the market that goes down to this level, pico level of understanding. And yeah, it's a fascinating tool, and I don't know any other tool on the market that can do what it can do. So thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. Yeah, I want to talk to you about AI actually. So what's your thoughts on AI in supporting zero trust principles? Just to kind of go that direction.
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
you need automation of basically the updates to occur, be nice, and so that everything is well for hygiene, but also for the predictive analysis that we talked about is necessary. You have to have some AI components to actually do this based upon the data that they're getting, and so I think that helps along with it's necessary to do this, but you have to be careful. We've always had this problem before that if you ask the system to do things that may cause stoppages, you need to understand the ramifications of that stoppage and the conditions by which the stoppage occurs. Okay. Now, obviously, if your pipe is it's 20 megabytes a day and that's 500 megabytes all of a sudden for an hour, you probably have to stop it. If it's 20 megabytes and it's only 22, and then it goes back to 19, okay, that's within a range, that's okay. But AI is always sensitive to the data, and the problem is it is always sensitive to the data. That's the problem.
Yeah.
As the data changes, we always have a problem with AI systems is that they assume things are standard across the board. And if I can't understand that things change in your system,
yes,
you have to understand that. For instance, a lot of systems, especially in the government, have surge capabilities. Okay, guess what happens at the end of the year? It surges.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand that as part of the philosophy of when you put AI into the system, you have to understand there are surge points that you can not avoid. And so you don't want to stop when a predicted surge is going to occur anyways.
Yes,
you want to stop if it's without that predicted surge window.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think, would it be fair to say that once the AI and the machine learning aspect of it actually understands that this traffic or spike is normal, then you can set the parameters around that to say, yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
But there's a learning aspect which you would expect any AI system to be, to have to go through before it would actually be able to alert. And I would reiterate what you just said. From my experience as well, like AI is a buzzword, in the industry at the minute, but in reality, it's not just turn a switch, bye, it's over to you, AI. It's really, it's a nice to have. It can do really, really cool stuff, but you need a human being with good experience to be able to take out any of the false positives, and just, over time, you will bring down, we discussed earlier, those alerts. So you want to make it manageable for a SOC or for a CISO team, that their alerts are probably about 30 or 40 a day. If you're going into the hundreds and hundreds, you're going to overrun them, and eventually they will not. They won't respond, and then that's dangerous. So yeah, it takes time and learning, but I think it's a very, very powerful system to have. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so as one of the visionaries of Zero Trust, I know that that is being implemented across the Department of Defense. What challenges do you face, and what would you advise, CIOs and CISOs and executives?
Okay, the first thing is not magic. It's nice. There's not one hardware software solution. They have to get rid of that. Get out of your mind.
No silver bullets.
That's no silver bullets here. And so it's a process of actually doing the things. You have to determine your vulnerable attack surfaces, and then look at what missions you want to protect to the extent that you want to do it for the IoT, OT, as well as the standard applications across multiple systems. And you have to implement in phases. That's why I say you have to probably then do the identity, credential, and access management first, because it's an essential piece of any part of the zero trust systems. And that's probably, it's not the easiest one to implement. You probably have to phase it in, because depending on the number of systems you have, what you want to be able to do is identify, authorize, and authenticate based upon the roles and responsibilities or the attributes of the person, or the attributes of the non-person entity.
Role-based.
That's what you want to get to. So if you're going to build it, you're going to build it slowly. Build it for key systems first, and then enlarge it for the other systems. And I think that's the way to do it. And of course, you're going to have cultural issues. This is going to be the other issue that you're going to have all the time is like, why am I doing this? What am I gaining from this?
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. And I think like to make it very simple for anybody who's new to this game is that, you know, the most destruction that can be caused is people with admin access and above. And, you know, somebody that has no, you know, has a virtual machine, and if a threat actor gets onto that machine, there's limited amount of damage they can do depending on what's on that machine. Let's just say it's not so sensitive. But if they breach an administrative account or higher, you could be in a world of pain. And I mean tens of millions, if not your company gone kind of pain. So those, as you said, that access list to know who has access to what and what is connected to what is vital. And if you don't get that solved and know what you originally said before, where your crown jewels are, then you're in trouble. That's should be your highest priority. So totally agree with everything you said there. So thank you so much. Brilliant. Yeah, I think that brings us to nearly the end of our talk. Is there anything else you want to say, Frank, or are you happy with all that?
No, I'm happy with all that. Just keep on trying. This is going to take a while, but you need to do it. That's the bottom line. You really need to do it to actually be secure. And Avocado does it at the lowest possible level. So you probably need both at the high level and the low level to actually get everything done, but it's necessary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So in closing, I just want to thank Frank for this fascinating talk on such a wide range of topics in the cybersecurity space. I know your knowledge is absolutely vast, and your experience is vast. So thank you so much. It's great to hear these thoughts in areas of security observation, application protection, and data protection. Really amazing stuff. So here in Dublin, Ireland, some say the tech capital of Europe. I'm not biased at all. We have a saying that says goodbye in protection. So that is Slán Abhaile, which means may you be protected on your way home. So I say that to you, Frank, and I say that to everybody else who's watching. So thank you so much, and I really look forward to our next Fireside chat. It's been really lovely. Thank you, sir.